Yes!
Oh, the embarrassments of riches. How are you going to make this team? How are you going to make this team? Who's going to make this team? I dare you to be one of the 53 to make this team.
I mean, one of the things we're going to have to do is go through at some point the roster now, what it looks like, and talk about who.
Are you kidding?
Who enjoyed what happened over draft weekend? For example, Stiff Arm Steve comes to mind, the whole tight end room, no movement, no action there. And who now has real competition. And I don't think once you get past the first 3 picks, I don't think there are any guarantees of being on the roster. I think that there would be leans. Certainly your 4th rounders are looking pretty good, but there's real competition. You're competing to take the jobs of people who have played in the NFL at a high level for this organization. And I just go back to this. No way, no how. I talked to Paul DePodesta. We run simulations. It's like, think about, for those who have watched the Avengers Endgame, 14,065,000 or whatever outcomes. There's only one where we end up winning. They ran 14,065,000 simulations. 0 of them had Greg Newsome and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah becoming Cleveland Browns in the 2021 NFL Draft. And they did that, and all they did to make it happen was turn a 3rd-round pick into an early 4th-round pick. I'll tell you,
it was
art. It's poise. It's the 4th P now. The poise to know that you wanted to go.
Oh, boy, a 4th P.
It's the 4th P. They've earned it. They've earned that 4th P, folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, hold on. Breaking news.
Coming.
There's a 4th P.
There's a 4th P.
Hold on. Good God, do we have a sounder for breaking news? A 4th P.
Coming to you live from Browns headquarters in Berea, Ohio. This is Cleveland Browns Daily.
Well, it's one of them.
I don't think that's it.
We're getting close, though. We're getting
that
warm.
Ain't it.
We're getting warm. Yeah, there's a 4th P, poise.
Holy cow, a 4th P.
ESPN Cleveland, breaking news.
Oh,
there it is. Where once
4th
there were
P
3
has
Ps,
been added.
Now there are 4.
Oh, boy.
They're prepared. They've got a plan, a process to implement that plan, and the poise to make sure they stick to it. And come on, Beau, you and I are in a fantasy draft, okay? Let's just go ahead and put us in those seats with our emotions, with our passion, which would be our 4th P. And you mean to tell me the guy that I wanted to get with my 1st-round pick is somehow sitting there? The patience and the poise.
Wait.
Is that a 5th P? Let's not go crazy. Let's just stay with 4 now. Poise.
I actually wrote it down before you said it. It could be a 5th P. Patience.
It could
Oh,
be.
my God, 5 Ps.
Jeez Louise. A starting lineup of Ps.
Good God almighty.
Not to mention the hugest P in the world, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. I hope, Gibbe, do you have the sounder from Browns Live? Because I want to play that clip in your honor. Do you have that at the ready, or do you need time to prepare this?
Do I have what? What are you asking me?
The sound from Browns Live where the chief strategy officer of the Cleveland Browns offered you a new job. Live on Browns Live. Do you have that?
I don't, man. I like to fly under the radar.
No, it's over. You're done.
We're
under
not
the radar.
braggadocious.
Under the radar. People are driving past a place called Gibbe's and screaming Gibbe at the top of their lungs to the bewilderment of their family. You're not under the radar anymore, brother. But I go back to what I was saying is the fact that they weren't even tempted to move up into the 30s for him. They're like, doesn't fit our profile. We don't want to lose a pick. And then it gets in the 40s, and they're like, okay, we'll consider, but we called up and people were interested, but they didn't like our terms. We didn't budge. There's no budging.
Nope.
There's the poise, the 4th P.
No.
And they wait and move up to 52 and get him. And it's just like, I saw Joe Woods on Sunday night, and Joe Woods, I've been saying it's ever since this whole month, it's like Christmas, but now he can't wait. He's like, I just want to have practices. I just want to play. I'm on the whiteboard. I'm fired up. Everybody's coming in here. What a treat. What a time to be alive.
It's an unbelievable pure joy time to be alive. It's a World's Team edition. I mean, that's what it is. It is a roster that to me is without peer in the National Football League.
I think
it
that's
is a
fair.
roster without peer. It is as good as any roster in the league. There's no jinxing it. It is what it is.
Right.
That's just how good it is. I was starting to do the math to 53, and I was names not in the 53 are names you know. That's how competitive this is going to be. It very much reminds me, and my background is in college. It very much reminds me of what I've seen at Ohio State when they're at their best, where the fight to get on the field is so brutal.
Yes.
The depth we have in the secondary right now is absolutely ludicrous. There is no way to wrap your mind around it. The idea, I mean, you think of, this is crazy how this was very much like last year with Delpit and Wills. We did so much work on left tackle that we, at the end we relied on Dane and we relied on Joe, on Jedrick Wills. And if it's good enough for them, then he's good enough for us. But you and I talked about Delpit more than we talked about any prospect.
Ad nauseum.
We talked about Newsome and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah more than any other two prospects by far. By far. I remember talking about JOK with you in January.
Yeah.
And going, this is a dude who would be perfect for what Joe Woods wants to do. The idea that we were able to get both of them, when we would have loved to have either one of them at 26, we get them both without having to mortgage the farm, without having to give up future picks in terms of ones of high. It's a stunning level of accomplishment, but it doesn't stop there. The whole draft board, it just lines up. It's an incredible accomplishment.
I think from a pay attention to the scores standpoint, for not having scores, just understanding the way that these guys operate from getting to be around them, we gave you a pretty good roadmap to the draft. We told you the only linebacker they would even consider early in this draft was JOK. That was it. That was the list. And they got him. And, it's great what you just said about Joe Woods' defense. So when I interviewed Paul DePodesta, for those who have not seen the Sunday night Browns live, I urge you to go to youtube.com/Browns. Saturday night. I'm sorry. I don't even know what day it is anymore. I said that in the meeting earlier today. Every day it was insane. The Saturday night Browns live after the draft ended. We went through the draft. I went through the draft with everybody, but the meat was an interview with Paul DePodesta going through each and every prospect that we drafted. It's at youtube.com/Browns. I'll tweet out the link in the first commercial break. I urge everybody to check it out, because you're going to see all 4 Ps on display right there with Paul DePodesta. But he said about Greg Newsome
we should play it
in that interview.
Can we play it on this show?
We probably could.
We should play it on this show this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still go there.
I would be interested
in
hearing
views
it.
in.
It's in my DVR.
See it in his eyes.
Yeah, still go there. But
yes. Good notes.
All right, sorry,
we could, because it was great. But what he said was Greg Newsome is so awesome, he's scheme agnostic, which is when you start talking about people as scheme agnostic, I mean, that's just highfalutin, and you love that kind of flowery language from our chief strategy officer. But basically, he's like, look, if you want to if you're a press man team, if you're a man team, if you're, a zone team and off, he does it all. Like, he's perfect. But he said, when you talk about that guy's scheme agnostic, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is scheme perfect. He goes, he was built to play in this defense. We were built for him. And I'm going to go back one more year, because you're talking about all the people we talked about in that 2020 draft. Who was the other guy? Dos Unos. Dos Unos struggles in Arizona last year paved the way for other teams to get scared and let Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah come to us. So Dos Unos, I think he sacrificed himself for JOK to be a Cleveland Brown, because of he was respected the praise that we heaped upon him in that pre-draft coverage.
I think you're right.
He said, I can't be there, but I'm going to give you me who can actually cover better in JOK next year.
Yeah, and that is a situation where, so to me, when I think of JOK, what comes to mind immediately is he is a will linebacker. I think of Fred Warner. And for people worried about his size, I mean, that's what I think of. I just think a sideline to sideline guy. When people worried about his size, he weighs more than Darius Leonard. Leonard's 215.
Yep.
Like, he's 225. He's bigger than you think. He's going to run and tackle. He is going to run and tackle. But this was about, and obviously he's going to get the most of the attention because it's somebody we've talked about so much. And I just love the fit more than anything. He's look amazing in that 28 running around out there. But then you start to go down, and you think about the show we did after the loss to Kansas City. You had one word. Speed.
Yep.
Speed.
That was it.
Third round. Anthony Schwartz, wide receiver, Auburn. Speed. Fastest player in this draft.
In the draft.
Probably the fastest, among the fastest players in the NFL next season. He run a lot of gadget stuff at Auburn. But he can run a 9. And now you're talking about, remember we talked about how many times you hear us talk about McCole Hardman in the last few weeks?
A ton.
All you need is a guy, 10 plays,
guy.
Get gone, take the top off. Oh, he's here, and we have one of the best deep ball quarterbacks in the league. And now all of a sudden, I got to pay attention when 10's on the field. Where's he at? Where's he coming from?
And he can hit you vertical. He can hit you on the deep crosses. He creates space. He's going to run some jet sweeps, some bubble screens. Yes, it's that speed. And every time he's out there, you're right, he's got to be accounted for. I'm going to remind you of an undrafted free agent, Taylor Gabriel, back in 2014, who ran a 4.28 out of Abilene Christian, didn't get an invite, was invited to a mini camp. He was a mini camp tryout. Not even an undrafted free. He was a mini camp tryout who earned his way. He had 600 yards that year. Now, look, that's not going to happen this year with Schwartz because we have other weapons in this offense that we did not have in the year 2014 here with the Cleveland Browns. But the point is, he is going to make an impact both by touching the football and by just his presence and his speed. Gus Malzahn said he thinks he's one of the steals of the draft. Never used properly at Auburn. In fact, Paul DePodesta came out and said immediately, we're not so sure they used him the right way there. That's not how we're going to use him here. We have big plans for him and what we think he can be.
No, they ran a lot of bubbles and quick hitch stuff with him. Everything was like catch it, stop, and then make people miss and go. They didn't use him very much down the field. They didn't use him with a full head of steam. No, I agree.
There are a couple highlights where he ran by the LSU secondary to the tune of 10 yards ran by. That's the LSU secondary.
LSU's got dudes.
They've got dudes and just ran by him like they were running in sand. This guy won gold medals for the U.S. in the 4x100 relay. He set the world record as a junior sprinter. He was the Gatorade Track Athlete of the Year. I mean, this is somebody who, if he wanted to, could be in the Olympics.
Yeah. But it didn't stop there. It did not. In fact, it did not stop there. We go to the fourth round, and a little name, James Hudson, comes off the board. This was last Thursday or Wednesday when we were going through your mock drafts, and we dare I say Gibby?
Well, we were just curious about his tape study that led him to the conclusion. That's
his tape study, his tape study, yeah. And James, look at Gibby, the victory lap is
it's so great. I wouldn't let it go under. I told Depot straight up in that interview, I was like, just so you know, Jason Gibbs was on this and mocked him to us because he liked his feet and his movement skills. Do you have that clip? Come on. I want to play that clip.
I'll find it.
Get it. Because what Paul DePodesta said next.
You need that.
What a moment. What a moment
for Gibby.
Yes.
What a moment.
Hudson, and listen, Joe Thomas on Friday night when we were doing day 2 of the draft, he was one of the guys that Joe Thomas thought was a perfect fit here because of his feet and because –
So –
Go ahead.
I failed us as a show. This James Hudson is known to me. He is the Michigan player who transferred to Cincinnati, and Michigan held up his transfer.
Tried to block it.
I spent a lot of time talking about Hudson. And when we were doing this show, when we were going over Gibby's mock, when we were doing this show when we were talking about Gibby's film study, it did not register with me until we picked him that was the same human that Gibby had mentioned. It was at the end of a show, I want to say on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
A million things were going on. As soon as I saw us pick him, I went, the Michigan guy, Luke Fickell, the head coach at Cincinnati, loves him. If you're looking for video evidence of how good he can be, look no further than their bowl game against Georgia. Hudson is bounced from the game for a targeting, kind of a dubious targeting call. They are moving the ball on the Georgia front. He gets bounced from the game, and it is shut down. Tackle that replaces him gives up 3 sacks within the first 5 or 6 plays. Game's over. But they were moving the ball with Hudson against Georgia, who, like LSU, had dudes. I should have had this at the ready, and I know him, and I was very frustrated. It wasn't until I saw the pick that I put it all together. Oh, my God, that's the guy. Gibby said, what a theft this is. And again, and I'll get to Togiai in a second, guys that you would have said are worthy of third-round picks we're getting in the 4th.
Yep. and they brought in somebody again that fits exactly what they're looking for with no pressure to play. And that's what Joe said. Look, he's new to the position, but you can see his get off. And he said, if you have a get off, you can play. When I talked to James Hudson after we picked him, he said, well, I was a defensive lineman, so of course I know about how important get off is. So Joe liked him, and then you get to come in here. And how about this? I don't know if you heard this story. So, and this is how cool, guys, we are so lucky that Joe Thomas played for our organization, right?
Yeah.
He's as good as it gets. He's a better human. And the story I'm going to share with you is one of a billion examples that I could give you. So Hudson, I'm talking with Hudson, and he says when he made the transition from defensive tackle to offensive lineman, that the first thing he did, and that he has done every day since, is he watches YouTube cut-ups, and then he was able to get film, obviously, but of Joe Thomas playing left tackle. Because he said, I knew that I was never going to be the most massive, biggest, strongest guy. So what I had to do, good footwork, good technique. Who is the best technician perhaps of all time at left tackle? Joe Thomas. So I watched Joe over and over and still do. That is my hero. Now, one, you get to come into a room where Bill Callahan is going to teach you everything that you could possibly want to know about how to play tackle in the NFL. Scott Peters is going to tell you everything you could possibly want to know about how to position your thumbs and your arms for the maximum leverage and power and all this insane stuff, because that guy is he might be the most interesting man in the world. But I text Joe. I'm like, Hoff, we got that guy Hudson you were talking about. All he did when he made the transition was watch your stuff. You're like his football idol.
Yeah.
And you know what Joe said? That's awesome. I'm going to go call him.
Of course.
So Joe Thomas is probably at this point, on the day that a fourth rounder out of Cincinnati was drafted to the Cleveland Browns organization, picked up the phone himself, the Hoff, to call him and welcome him and to say, listen, I'm here for you. Whatever you need. You ever want to talk ball? I'm here for you. That's who the Hoff is. And I want you to know, as crazy as it sounds, because we've heard Kurt Warner say, I offer this to everybody and nobody calls me. The Hoff had made that offer to another talented, albeit raw, left tackle in our organization who was like, I'm good. No longer in the organization.
Nothing to see here. Yep.
But that's who the Hoff is.
I mean, that is who the Hoff is. Yeah, you could go through every one of these. One other specific note I wanted to make, just at the defensive tackle with the two defensive tackles, and one we drafted, one's that we got in free agency. So Tommy Togiai out of Ohio State. If Tommy Togiai had returned to Ohio State, he would have been, in my view, a top 15 pick in next year's NFL draft. The Ohio State guys, for reasons beyond hard for me to explain, all dropped despite playing in a very disjointed season at Ohio State. Yep. They all dropped. They ended up having 10 of them drafted. It was the same amount as Bama had, but every single one of them dropped, some significantly. Sean Wade, Tommy Togiai is another one. He wanted him in the first round. He is a dude. Tommy Togiai is a dude. He is a big-time player, ultra strong. I don't think folks who don't pay attention to college football have any idea what Ohio State players were up against this year in terms of if they were going to play or not. They were basically human yo-yos from June until November. Are we going to play? Are we not going to play? Are we going to play? Not going to play? Get out of the facility, get into the facility. Over and over again for months. They played 5 games. They showed out in many instances. Sure, there were rough spots, but this kid is a player. He is a player, and he's going to make this team, and I think he'll make an impact in year one. The other one I want to mention is Marvin Wilson. So 2 things I want to say on this. Number one, this is a dang good job out of the Haslams, because this is writing a guaranteed money check to a free agent.
It's 2 years in a row.
That 2 years in a row that we've done this. So that's a dang good job, and it tells you how important winning is to your ownership. Marvin Wilson was the number 1 defensive tackle in the country coming out of Texas in high school.
Oh, was he a 5-star?
That's right.
Kind of like some of the other people we drafted late in this draft.
Period. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. He was a 5-star. He was the number 1 defensive tackle in the country. He was the number 6 overall player in the country coming out of high school. When he got to Florida State, he was a beast.
He looked like Warren Sapp in the highlights that I've seen.
Yes, he is a beast. They have had a lot of things off the field happen in that program in the last couple of years, and he was in the middle of it. But his talent level, the idea that if you would go back 2 years ago, everybody would have mocked him in the top 10 in any draft after his freshman year at Florida State. Everybody would have.
And now
that's how good he was.
So
now he's a Brown.
So I'll share another little story. Again, what was so great was to be in a building that was literally the embodiment of pure joy. People were walking around here with big smiles on their faces. I told you none bigger than Joe Woods. So I ran into Joe Woods in the hallway on the way to draft coverage Friday night. So we'd already gotten Newsome. We were talking just about the whole offseason.
Yep.
Ecstatic. Beyond. This is pre-JOK. Beyond.
Okay.
He's like, we're going to play my defense the way we want. He shared this awesome note with me about how much he loves Clowney and how when he was in Denver, he was such a fan of Clowney and the way Houston used him that when he became defense coordinator in Denver, one of the first things he did was watch every third down and blitz package from the Texans that year and then stole a bunch of those ideas and gave them to Von Miller, who went on to have a monster year that year. So he has been, and so he is
nice.
So pumped about the things he can do, so pumped about Newsome. He loves Newsome, getting grief. He was over the moon. Then you get JOK, okay? Now he is, they're running to the whiteboard. The pick is made,
right?
And Stefanski and Joe Woods and Tarver are running to whiteboards drawing stuff up. They're so excited. I mean, they're like kids in a candy store. They're so happy. You couldn't even contain Joe Woods on Friday night. Couldn't do it. He was in fuego. Couldn't even hope to contain him. I run into him Saturday night walking out of the building. Draft's over. I'm like, and now JOK. We're getting into the let's goes and all this, and we're fired up. And then he goes, Wilson. He goes, and then we got this kid out of Florida State. He was as excited about that as I felt like, honestly, anything else. He goes, that dude is a dog. He's a dog.
Yes.
I'm like, wait a second. Yep. We just brought in former number 1 overall pick, former first-rounder in Tack McKinley, Troy Hill, John Johnson. You get JOK, you get Newsome, and the dude, honestly, that I felt like he was at that moment the most pumped up about was Wilson, the defensive tackle from Florida State, an undrafted free agent. So,
the pedigree with him is
just file that nugget away if they're able to harness and keep him focused on the field and handle all that. Just remember all of those names that were out there, and Joe Woods was as pumped up about Mr. Wilson as anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are other names, amazingly, that we didn't get a chance to talk to here. We will get into those. Our 5th and 6th rounders, what we like with those guys, and we like a lot of it. We will get to that coming up. Those are your OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns. For all the X's and O's to your office, call 216-485-2000. Visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Really quickly before we get out of this first segment, and I know we're up against it, Gibby. It's a damn good job out of you, Cleveland.
Great job.
It's a dang good job out of you. That was nice. And the weather, I know it was chilly, but the weather looked so great on television. It was so smart, the decision to take it down to the lake, to get the view of the lake, to have the sunset, to look back on the skyline. It's an angle you rarely get of our city nationally, honestly, when it's photographed. You rarely get it. And it was a stunning visual to see. And just to see the overwhelming love that the people who were here had for the way that we put it on. It was very, very impressive. It's a good job out of the city and the Browns and everybody who was involved with that, certainly. All right, lots to get to on this program, including the coach will join us. Kevin Stefanski will join us coming up at about 2:45. You have that to look forward to, which is nice. Don't miss the Browns Draft Review Show. That's tonight, Discount Drug Mart, 7 to 8 on the University Hospital's Cleveland Browns Radio Network. Andrew Barry will join Jim Don will join Ken Carmen and Z to recap the 21 NFL Draft. Off and running here, Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Knowing one's limit's important, whether it's a snap count for a football player or a spending limit when you're playing the lottery. So if you like to gamble, set a limit beforehand and stick to it. If you'd like to learn more, go to keepitfunohio.com for helpful tips on how to keep gambling fun. We mentioned a lot of these guys. We did not get to the 5th and 6th rounders. And again, if you are somebody who follows college football and follows recruiting, there are familiar names here as well. Z, let's start with Tony Fields, a linebacker out of West Virginia.
Yep.
Seeing some of Jake Burns' film study on him and his ability to get on the field potentially right away. Great in coverage. Did you have a chance to talk to Tony over the weekend? I'm assuming you did.
No, we did not. That pick happened, I think, right as we were wrapping it up. So we were not able to speak with him. So I look forward to talking. Listen, I went to Arizona, Zago, R.I.P. So like him with that pedigree from being down in Tucson. But look, he fits what they want. A guy who is comfortable in space, obviously a little bit small on the small side, 6'1", 220, but speedy, rangy, good tackler. Look, I'm going to just throw this out there right now. Here's your linebacker room as of today. Okay? Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Anthony Walker Jr., Jacob Phillips, Sione Takitaki. I believe those 4 are locks. That's what I believe. Now you've got Mac Wilson, Malcolm Smith, Elijah Lee, Tony Fields. That's 4 more. Those 4 are competing for 2 spots.
Yeah.
So this kid, if he comes in and is a special team stud, the first thing he should do is go right up to Mike Prefer and say, I'm all yours. What do you want? Because I like his speed. I like what he brings. But for Tony Fields to make an impact and to make this roster this year, he's got to be a special teams player. You remember when in the 5th round we drafted people who had to start right away? Now we're talking about you've got to be a stud on special teams to get on this roster, let alone get on the field. I like him. I like that pick.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a fun pick. I think the safety out of Georgia is a really interesting pick, and I love the 6th rounder, Demetric Felton out of UCLA.
Oh, yeah.
This is a guy who could do a lot of different things. He ran it at UCLA. He caught it at UCLA. You're talking about 900 yards from scrimmage as a junior, and then as a senior, it's 830. As a junior, it's mostly through the air. As a senior, it's mostly on the ground. He does a lot of things, can return. Certainly has an electric ability to put the ball in the paint. So there's a lot of opportunity here in this draft when you start to go down through it and even see, and that's what you just did with linebacker, buddy. You can do that at receiver if you'd want to, and it's about the same.
Receiver is like that. Now, Felton, they said, is going to come in the running back room. He averaged 111 yards rushing last year, 165 total, can return kicks as well. And when you watch his highlights, he's slippery. He's exciting.
Yeah.
He's exciting. And so I like that pick because he's very different.
He's kind of in that Curtis Samuel mode, that Samuel had at Ohio State. Like, he can run it, jet sweeps, quick hitters, those type of things. He's different than anybody we have. We don't have anybody like that.
Definitely. Yeah, you wonder if, he's a guy that you end up using in the NFL if you turn him into a Deion Lewis, if you turn him into a James White, the way James White would be used by the New England Patriots. I mean, gives you a lot of flexibility and versatility, I think, in that room. I like what they did. And then LeCount's a guy that was a 5-star as well, if I'm not mistaken. And,
yep.
and was somebody that the Buckeyes.
I remember Ohio State pursuing him.
Pursued him.
Yeah.
Now, people are saying, what about his numbers? His tally ran 4.76. That were all about speed. He was involved in a motorcycle accident. It sounds like was not fully healthy at that pro day where he put those numbers up, because when you watch his tape, this is a guy who played safety and was highly productive in the SEC. They're betting on a 5-star who excelled in the SEC in playing football.
Yep.
And so he now, Sheldrick Redwine. That's a competition now for the 4th safety spot, to be sure. And Sheldrick Redwine's played pretty well for you.
You go through this roster and you think about what we used to be doing when we would play the 53 game in camp, and the people we were to be talking about at the bottom of making that list compared to who's making it now. It used to be, and I'll never forget having these conversations with my father. He's like, we got to see who the Steelers cut, who the Ravens cut. Our cuts are going to be players.
Yeah, who have played in the NFL at a high level.
Yes, and can contribute on teams. Like, if you're the Houston Texans, pay attention to our cuts.
Well, they've taken everybody else that we've cut this offseason, so they might.
Right.
That's their pipeline.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a remarkable thing. The type of player. I mean, you mentioned Sheldrick. Look at the names that you left off at linebacker. They're going to be fighting for spots like crazy. Safety, receiver, running back room. Tough. The competition in camp is going to be absolutely extreme on this team. Absolutely extreme.
It's going to be incredible to watch. It's going to be incredible to watch.
Yep.
I mean, just go through it right now. You were just as fired up right now as you were about Togiai and also the kid from Florida State.
Wilson.
Okay? They're joining a room that's got Billings, Malik Jackson, and Jordan Elliott, who I would say are probably locks, but maybe they're not. I don't see how Malik Jackson and Billings certainly are, and Jordan Elliott they love. They drafted him third round last year and love
third
him.
Rounder.
Now you got Togiai and Wilson. I don't envision us keeping 5 defensive tackles. Unfortunately, if there was one thing that made me sad about the way that the draft played out, and obviously, look, the Browns are happy with it with Togiai and Wilson, and why wouldn't you be? I think that unfortunately closes the door for Sheldon Richardson to come back this season.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think that it would, that was the writing on the wall on that one. It's such a complete roster. It is such a complete roster. And I understand that part of what I'm saying is predicated on Odell Beckham Jr., Grant Delpit, Greedy Williams returning at 100%.
Sure.
But I believe this. I mean, this isn't because we're hosting this show with orange and brown colored glasses. I think it's the most complete roster in the NFL. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and us are the 2 most complete rosters. I think our roster is better top to bottom than Buffalo. Doesn't mean we're a better team than Buffalo. It doesn't. They've been in the same system for a long time now, and we haven't. They're a little further along in their growth than we are. And I'm not going to say that we're better than Kansas City because they have Mahomes. But we don't have the holes that Kansas City has in their secondary. We do not have the question marks. We have, if healthy, if those 3 guys come back healthy, you have, I think, the most complete roster I've ever seen in Cleveland, and I think it's as complete as any roster in the NFL. I say that without an ounce of hyperbole.
I don't think there is any hyperbole in it. Think about this from a defensive standpoint. I'm just going to run through this exercise with you and tell me what you think of the defense that I'm going to lay out for you, okay? Defensive ends, Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley. Defensive tackles, Billings and Malik Jackson. And now you could add Togiai to that list as well as Marvin Wilson. But just keep it go. Starting defensive line, Clowney and McKinley on the ends, Billings and Jackson on the inside. Your linebackers, Owusu-Koramoah and Anthony Walker Jr. Your secondary, these are people who did not play a snap for the Browns last year. Your secondary would be Greg Newsome, Troy Hill inside, Greedy Williams on the other side. Your safeties, John Johnson III and Grant Delpit. That is a complete nickel defense that would put you at a minimum in the middle of the pack in the National Football League of people who did not play a snap for you last year, and excludes, obviously, your 2 biggest names in Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, not to mention guys like Ronnie Harrison, all these other people who have contributed for you over the years. That's just didn't play a snap for you a year ago. You have a full nickel defense. They would be middle of the pack in the NFL at a minimum.
At a minimum, and maybe better. Yeah, and maybe better. Who won this draft? Not named us. We will get to that. Plus, you'll hear Joe Z's conversation with JOK coming up here in about 10 minutes from now. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Hey there, French. Beau Bishop for my friends at Northeast Factory Direct. You might be sick and tired of your outdated kitchen. You likely are. You probably didn't think it was possible to get it fixed out and fixed up, but you can. It's a time to upgrade, and if you do, you need to go to Northeast Factory Direct. They got high-quality, name-brand furniture. They've got hot tubs about half the price of the fancy retail stores. But at Northeast, you also get high-quality cabinets for 60 to 70% less than the expensive kitchen remodeling stores. And it's so easy. You make an appointment, you bring in basic measurements, and they're going to walk you through everything. Part about that, the appointment and the design are free. That's yours. Northeast Factory Direct cuts out all the costs associated with traditional stores. You can buy nice stuff at really incredible prices. They also have 0% financing available. So if you're thinking about remodeling your kitchen, and I know that you are, it's simple. You need to go to northeastfactorydirect.com and schedule your appointment today. All right, winners and losers not named us. Who did you like? Whose draft did you like other than ours, my friend? I know obviously we're dialed in on ours mostly, but who else did you take a look at and go, yeah, they seem to know what they're doing?
I actually really liked what the Chicago Bears did in this draft. And I think it obviously starts – I'm not going to get into, the rest of their draft, but to me this grade is based on Justin Fields in round 1 and then Tevin Jenkins, the left tackle, in round 2, who a lot of people thought was going to go in the first round. But when you make that move and you go get Justin Fields, I thought that's a home run for them. I thought it was a great job by that organization to lock that in.
I agree with you. I think they got the second surest thing at quarterback in this draft. And I think they got their Deshaun Watson a few years after trading and not drafting Deshaun Watson. So I think they are the clear winner. I don't know if Fields is a clear winner just because that place has been a quarterback graveyard unlike any. I was thinking about I don't even know who's second. It's 8th worst quarterback lineage than the Bears. It's the Bears by 1,000 miles.
They've never had anybody
There's
throw
nobody
for
close.
4,000 yards or 30 touchdowns in a season, either
Right.
of those. And that's insane.
That's impossible.
Impossible.
That's impossible. Yeah. I mean, it's like Sid Luckman, Jim McMahon, Cutler.
Yeah.
That's it.
Maybe a nice
and
run
McMahon
from
wasn't
Eric
great.
Kramer
Like,
at some point.
Little Jim Miller, little
Kyle
Eric Kramer,
Orton.
little Cade McNown.
Kyle Orton.
Jeez, just brutal. They went to a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman. For
Rex
God's sake.
Grossman.
I really like the Rex Grossman. Yeah, I really like the Dolphins draft. I thought what they did in the first round with Waddle and Phillips was big. I think they're one of the teams. If you break the NFL up into groups like contenders, ascend, teams on the ascent, teams that are foundational, being built, and then bottom barrel. To me, the Dolphins are a team that moved very clearly to the ascent. And then if I don't like Tua, but if they do, and if he's good, then they're on the cusp of contenders based on what they've done the last couple of years. I've liked their draft, and I think they got very good in the draft. Also, the two other teams that I thought did a nice job are the Chargers with Slater. I thought they had a nice draft. And I think New England with Mac Jones. I think that's a nice draft for the Patriots.
And I love the draft of the Jets. I love the first 4 picks of the Jets.
I do too, except for Wilson. I don't like Wilson, but so that's what clouds it for me.
All right,
but
so
they
take
are
him
putting him
out
in a
of
position to succeed.
Vera Tucker is a stud, so now you're going to have a stud left guard, left tackle with Becton from Europe. You get Elijah Moore in the second round, and then I think Michael Carter in the 4th round in this offense, that style is going to be awesome.
Yeah, if you put Fields there, then I would have said A+. I just don't believe in Zach Wilson. So that draft will be made or broken by that pick. That's the one that they'll rest on. All right, you're going to hear a conversation that Z and Joe Thomas and KC had with JOK. It's coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. His name is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. If you've listened to this show in the last few months, you know we have said it a lot, and we're hoping against hope he would be a Cleveland Brown. On Friday, he was. And on that night, on the draft show, Nathan, Joe, and Ken Carmen talked with him. Let's have a listen.
Jeremiah, thanks for...
You guys are down.
Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wake up, Cleveland. Appreciate you guys, man. Glory be to God.
We're so excited to have you. We heard you with the assembled media, the writers. The family's losing it. The family's very excited for you. How were they throughout this entire process?
Man, the family's been stable. The family has always been there as a firm foundation. So glad to have them. So glad to be in this family. So glad that God blessed me with the opportunity to be able to be raised in the household that I was raised in as well. So it's a blessing.
Jeremiah, you have set this city on fire. I'm sure you've seen on social media the reaction. The draft is here. Browns fans are a passionate bunch, my friend, and they are thrilled that you are here. What's something that you would want to say to the Dog Pound and let them know about the player that they just got in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah?
Man, no bark, all bite. No bark, all bite.
Well,
no
we like
bark, all
so
bite.
that's something. All right, Jeremiah, go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Jeremiah, Joe Thomas here. We're so excited to have you as a member of the Cleveland Browns. And I'm just curious, what do you know about this Browns defense so far, and how do you think you fit with the scheme that Joe Woods runs?
Well, it's a defense that's versatile, and that's just who I am. It's a defense that flies around. It's a defense that, is all about the pursuit, all about the process-oriented. It's a defense that understands perseverance, embracing the suck, and how to attack the ball. I'm getting all these things from these coaches and, in these meetings. And, you hear the tenacity, you hear the passion about these coaches on the defensive side of the ball, and how these three pillars revolve around smart, tough, and accountable. And just being able to implement those things and, just following through with that, man. This defense, man, I'm glad to be in it, and I'm ready to go.
Listen, we're excited. You clearly are a quick study. You already dropped the smart, tough, and accountable as the three pillars, so you have clearly talked with Coach Stefanski and Andrew Berry. You know what to say there, Jeremiah. I love that. Jeremiah, listen, it feels to me the evolution of the NFL, it's a space game. And guys that are comfortable in space, whether that's going and attacking, as you talked about, or covering, that's the name of the game. And you think about this division, you think about the AFC and the top teams here. You need guys that can do that. And I'll tell you, the Browns are thrilled. I don't know if you know this or not, but our chief strategy officer, Paul DePodesta, was talking with the media right after the pick, and he said that Kevin Stefanski, defensive coordinator Joe Woods, the linebacking coach Jason Tartt, they're so excited that as soon as they realized they were able to get you, they're already on the whiteboard drawing up ways to use you. How much do you like that? And what do you think about being a guy that excels in space in today's NFL?
Man, it's about that time. The league is changing. The league is becoming more of a pass-oriented league. More sub-package, more than 80% sub-package, third down. And I'm ready to just go in there and be a leader, but also go in there and be a student, respecting the guys and being able to revolve around them and cultivate with them. I'm just ready to go. I'm ready to get to it right now, and I can't wait, man.
You cut off for a second. You said you were about to go do laps on a beach. Is this true? What are you doing?
Man, look, I might go do about a mile or so on the beach.
We got sandy beaches here. You can do miles up here. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to absolutely love it. Jeremiah, when you got a chance to maybe talk to the Browns coaches or anything, was there a sense during this process that you might end up going to Cleveland? Because, all the pundits, they had you all over the board. There were people taking you as high as 12 to 15, or where the Browns were. I thought you might go at 26. You end up still going to the Browns at 52.
Now, you get what you earn, man. And, I wouldn't even say that I didn't earn first round, but I say that in the aspect of a great team. A great team, we have a saying here in the 757 that the real recognize real. And, genuine recognize genuine, greats recognize greats. So, it's a blessing for that team to choose me, but also in my mindset, I feel like we have compatibility there. Because just, picking me in that slot and, them trading up and things like that. A lot of stuff happens for a reason. And, I think, I'm more appreciative of the second round get than I am, would have been maybe in the first round, just to put it in perspective. So.
Jeremiah, a lot of guys had you going in that first round. You certainly could have been one of the top draft picks. You went to bed last night after not being drafted. What was the emotion like going to sleep, still not being drafted, not knowing where you were going to go? And compare that to the feeling you had when the Browns selected you tonight.
Yeah. Man, it went from 0 to 100. When I wouldn't even say 0 as in feeling sad or down. I was just in the state of, humility and calmness, and just went to sleep, knowing that, I'm a big man in my faith, and just knowing that, God has a plan, be able to have that patience, be able to have that belief, and, keep going and wake up with a smile on my face, knowing that I have breath still in my lungs. So it was a sense of humility. I still have that sense of humility now, and, it just went from grateful. My attitude is, tremendously been grown with that pick, and I really appreciate the coaches for that. Man, I'm probably gonna say I appreciate it 1,000 times before I get on the phone. But most deaf.
You go through that experience. Can you tell us what the phone call with the Browns was like? Because we're in the building, and you can feel the energy. I don't know if you guys recall. We've done this a lot. Joe and Ken and myself have done this a lot on this draft. That I don't recall at the podium that level of excitement from the organization, from one of the top people on the football side about getting you. Did you feel that excitement, and when you knew you were so wanted and coveted that the Browns said, we're moving up, we're getting you? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think you were pretty close, probably 50-50, that you would have been a Brown last night if Greg wasn't there. And now they get both of you. Did you feel that love, though, and that excitement from the Browns when they did call you? What can you share about that phone call that they made to you saying, come on down to Cleveland?
Yeah, man, honestly, that phone call was, it was like the whole world was standing still, yo. I ain't even gonna lie. Like, I felt like the world was standing still. I was just on the phone. Didn't have any reactions right there. And you just see the personnel, and they're just like, we about to get you, such and such, we're going to transfer you to here. I was like, oh, man, this energy crazy already. We about to be on. So, man, it was a good experience, man. Again, second time, I'm appreciative.
How closely were you watching the draft from pick to pick when the Browns actually traded up to pick you? Did you have a sense when you saw the Browns trade up that was maybe one of the spots that was going to be targeting you to be able to pick you in that spot?
Man, no, I didn't even I didn't even see the trade up. Like, I was like looking down at my phone. I was looking down at my phone, and I was like kind of like going back and forth, and I just saw Cleveland up there, and I saw the Cleveland Browns. I got the orange heart. I got Cleveland Browns with the orange heart as a contact. I'm not even sure who the person was. I probably shouldn't say, but man, it was crazy. I was like, oh man, but yeah. With that, I digress.
I love it. I love it. Jeremiah, I just want to share one quote with you here. This is from Tony Dungy, the venerable coach of the Indianapolis Colts. He said, my son Justin is a huge Browns fan. He's pumped right now because they just drafted a phenomenal defensive player. When I watched Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah play for Notre Dame last year, he reminded me of a young Derek Brooks. I think he will be a great open field defender. I think we've all heard about Derek Brooks and Tony Dungy. So you got a lot of fans out there.
30.
Than the people in Cleveland. You're going to find this is like a collegiate feel. This town is going to embrace you, love you, and we are thrilled to welcome you to the Cleveland Browns, man.
Man, let's go, man. Let's get to it.
Let's go. This is great. Let's go.
Tomorrow. All right, tomorrow.
Jeremiah, we're looking forward to having you here. We're looking forward to seeing you in the building. All the best to you and your family. Enjoy the night.
Let's go. Appreciate you. Thanks.
You guys are up.
That's awesome.
I love that kid. Let's go. Come on.
That's good.
He's throwing the pillars around. He's got let's goes. He's been studying. He's been doing his homework.
Yeah, and it's not hard on him. You put him in at line. He's a will linebacker, and you let him go. Let him run. That's it, and he's going to do that. Don't overthink it. It's not and Joe Woods knows exactly what he's got. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll get Jake Trotter's perspective all of this coming up next. Coming up in about 45 minutes, Kevin Stefanski will join the program. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, second out of the program here on Cleveland Browns Daily, and the pick is in. Perfect Power Wash is the consensus #1 in professional power washing. The proven process will safely, absolutely, and effectively neutralize the algae, mold, and mildew currently wreaking havoc on your home's exterior. Provide a legal defense against further damage, whether it's your siding, your concrete, your deck, patio, your roof. Perfect Power Wash has the skill and the experience to make an immediate impact in just 5 minutes over the phone. The professionals of Perfect Power Wash are going to answer all your questions, provide you with a free quote, and schedule your service. Don't drop the ball. Make the right call. Go with the pros at Perfect Power Wash. Appointments are filling up fast, though, so schedule your service today. Call the pros now, 888-860-WASH. That's 888-860-WASH. Use the promo code BEAU. You can save 10% on your Perfect Power Wash. It is always perfect. We get to talk to our good buddy Jake Trotter, ESPN, NFL Nation Browns reporter.
What a transition.
Well, another draft in the books, another offseason by and large in the books in terms of player acquisitions. Jake, I said this to Z, and we've been talking about it a little bit in the first hour. To me, this roster is as good as any in football. I really do believe that. When all is said and done, what does it look like to you?
Yeah, I can't disagree. I mean, certainly top 5, top 10 when you factor in both sides of the ball. And, I mean, just the overall additions the Browns have made, Andrew Berry made to the defensive side of the ball, really impressive. I mean, I would not be honest. It's not completely unthinkable that they would have 9 new defensive starters next year, at least 7 or 8. And, quality guys, too, not like, undrafted free agents. So they have done a terrific job. Last year it was the offense. This year it's the defense. And, I think they're going to be able to play a complementary football this year in a way that they weren't able to last season because the defense, whether it was injuries or, guys just not playing up to the par you hope for, had a hard time.
Jake, as you watch this draft unfold, and it really felt like for the second year in a row, the board just kind of fell the way the Browns would have dreamt that it would fall. What did you make of the way that the first 2 rounds unfolded and the haul that the Browns were able to come away with?
Yeah, no question. I mean, sometimes the draft need a little bit of luck. Good fortune. The Browns definitely got that with the board this year. I mean, I think they were expecting Newsom to probably go in the 20 to 23 range, right? So we're obviously thrilled that he fell to them at 26. And then, one of the if Newsom were gone was JOK. So to get him all the way down at pick 52 in the second round, I mean, it's just an absolute steal. Really, I think solidifies linebacking core going forward long term. So I think with the first 2 picks, I mean, just an absolute home run in terms of value. You got 2 guys that I think could have very easily gone in the top 18 of the draft. To get those guys with your first and second picks, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it certainly is. Having a little bit of trouble with Jake's phone. We're going to disconnect and reconnect with Jake here in just a second and get him right back on. It is that will be the headliner, and we'll get into some of the rest of these picks as well. But the headliner is 2 guys you would have been thrilled to get at 26. You get at 26 and 52. You get them both. That's really the headliner here, Z.
Of course it is, and that's what I think. That's why you saw so much joy in this building. And honestly, in addition to joy, it was disbelief. This is surreal that Greg Newsome II and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah will both be Cleveland Browns. That was the feeling in this building. I've talked to a lot of people involved. That it was kind of stunned, which is why they earned the 4th B, because the poise it took to let that happen at 52 is incredible. That's incredible poise. I mean,
yeah,
it would have been so easy to say, all right, let's just throw them, a 2022 2 or a 2022 3, and let's just go get them. Let's go get them. Let's do it. And the good news for me, I don't know about for you, was as I was watching this, I had 2 people that in my dream scenario we would have come out of the second round with. Now we're talking just ridiculous, just absurd dreams were Elijah Moore and JOK. Elijah Moore was gone 2 picks into it, so that was off the table. So then it was all JOK, and then it happened. I've never seen Carmen get out of a chair that fast in my life.
He's back up.
Let's head back out on the hotline. Jake is back with a better connection this time. Yeah, those will be the headliners, right, Jake? I mean, you get Newsom and JOK, two guys you'd have been thrilled with at 26. You get both. You get them at 26 and 52. And then beyond that, there's a lot of ties that bind in terms of the rest of these players and their profiles. And it all fits what Andrew Berry's done now in 2 drafts. And that's high-end elite traits, in many instances, big-time schools. And it just fell in. I mean, I look at even the 2 fourth-rounders, you could argue both would be third-rounders. That kind of repeated throughout the draft process.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add would be versatility, right? You know, a guy like Felton, for example, I mean, they're going to be able to do a lot of things with him. He can not only can return no picks, but and not only can he be the number 3 running back potentially, but, you know, this is a guy you can line up in the slot. You can throw the ball to him out of the backfield. I mean, I had a scout from another team text me the minute Felton got taken just how much he loved him and how much of a weapon he's going to be for Baker in the passing game. So, yeah, I think you nailed it. Big-time schools, value, but also a lot of versatility. And that includes, you know, somebody like JOK who can do a lot of different things on the field, you know, really fits Joe's scheme that way. And, you know, assuming somebody like Grant Delpit gets healthy again, I mean, they're going to have a lot of tools to work with in that secondary next year.
Jake, what are the expectations now? Now you've seen what they have done here in this offseason, and I'm sure we'll dig into a couple more people in the draft, but now that you've seen kind of the totality of what's happened, where's your mind at? I mean, is this a situation where winning the AFC North, deep run in the playoffs, or that's the bar? Is that the bar for you now?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the 2019 season today, right? There was just so much hype with this team. It was my first year covering it. You expected the Browns to get to the playoffs that year. Then, you know, they went 6-10. Maybe the biggest disappointment in the league. So I wonder, you know, there's a lot of guys that were there on that team, despite the revamping on both sides of the ball. And I wonder if they're going to be mentally better positioned to deal with the expectations, because they are coming, and the expectation is Super Bowl. Like, I don't know if it's winning the Super Bowl, but it's to get there. I mean, you made the second round of the playoffs last year, despite all the COVID issues you had. Your quarterback is a year older. He's going to have a second year now in the same system. You've got everybody back, 11 starters offensively. You've added a ton of talent to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, the schedule is not that difficult when you look at it, and we'll find out, you know, May 12th, in what order they're playing those teams. But I mean, you know, Kansas City's the favorite. Buffalo's maybe right after that. But, like, who in the AFC would you put ahead of the Browns right now?
Nobody. I actually think just because Buffalo's had continuity, they're ahead of us. But based on roster, I think ours is even more complete. And I think it'll be harder to make ours even than Buffalo's, honestly.
Buffalo's
Jake,
good,
you know,
Buffalo's
the thing.
Good.
I'm not. I'm. No question. I'm not somebody who puts them down. I'm full believer in them, and I admit it. I'm wrong on Allen. I like Art. I think it's going to be really hard to make this team, and I just don't see the holes. And I just think the one thing with us is it's just Baker in year 2 of a system. And you bring up 2019. I think that's valuable. And a word that you hear a lot in corporate speak is alignment, and it almost to the point where it becomes cliche. But the biggest difference between 19 and 21, that's it. It's true organizational alignment, and you'll have it, and you'll have. We saw it last year with Stefanski, just how organized he was, and how restless he is to make sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And I don't have any. I mean, Nathan and I are as guilty of anybody as riding a wave in 2019. We had a lot of fun that offseason.
Boy,
I don't regret any of it.
Same.
I don't regret any of it. It was a lot of fun, but having experience, there were little things in that offseason you went, oh, I don't know. This one doesn't have that feel. This is a very different feel for me at least than it was in 2019, even from that perspective.
Well, I think the foundation is there in a way that it wasn't in 2019. I mean, the Browns were just 2 years removed from going, 0-16, 1-15, and there were a lot of moving pieces on the coaching staff, even though Freddie was back that year. I mean, a lot of new offensive coaches. They were sort of running the same offense, but not really, right? And so there just wasn't the same kind of continuity that you're going to find with this team as well. And, I think alignment has certainly been the backbone of this franchise the last year or so, from the front office to the coaching staff and getting the right kind of players for the schemes that the Browns are going to run and filling in, the holes accordingly. Now I think what's going to be important is you're going to have the alignment from the coaching staff to the players. Everybody knows what the expectation is. And I think that could be a huge difference in this team succeeding now versus 2019 when it was such a big flop.
Yeah, and just the poise and the fact you walk in the building, the first thing you see is work, the work that will be put in, the preparation that will be put in, and just the calm. I think that's the other thing, too. It's a calm environment here for these guys. I'll tell you what won't be easy to do, though, is make a 53-man roster. And Beau talked about that right off the top. This roster is so deep, and you even go through now, an undrafted free agent, for example, like Marvin Wilson, that they are fired up about in this building. It's hard. I mean, you almost feel like you need to have a 65-man roster for all the people that have played in the NFL already or that are highly regarded prospects to be on this team. And I think I think this summer is going to be fascinating. I can't wait to get to the fall, obviously, to see this team play games. But this summer here, this training camp, this is going to be the most must-see training camp in the history of this organization.
Yeah, and I haven't, sat down and tried to project out, the 53 or 55 man.
Good luck when you do. Good luck.
But I will tell you, the last couple of years, it's been pretty easy to do. I mean, I could get 51, 52 out of the 53 right the last couple of years. Maybe you miss on who the fourth defensive tackle was going to be, or were they going to take an extra DB for special teams reasons, or I think it's going to be a lot trickier trying to find out who's going to make this team this time around, and that's because they've drafted well. They've signed a bunch of guys who can play, and they've still got guys that have been here that are going to be fighting for jobs as well. So I do think you're right. It is going to be very competitive, which should only make the overall team better.
Yeah, and I think for the reasons it was easy before, it's difficult now. It's not because you're trying to say, okay, just put this guy in here. Which one? We're going to be cutting really good players. We're going to be cutting guys who are NFL players who have played in the league and instances started in the league. They're not going to make this group. It's a remarkable thing that's happened, and so now you just wonder, as you get to camp, we've got some NFLPA stuff that we got to deal with in terms of that. Jake, what's next for you as you start to focus in on the next big thing you'll be paying attention to here?
Yeah, I think the schedule is kind of the next thing. What are we, 9 days away? Just curious to see, how the season ends, right? How it begins. The Browns, I don't know when the last time they got off to a really good start with the opener. I don't have that in front of me. I think it's been pretty bad though, right? The Browns in season opener. So,
that's
you want the opportunity to get off to a good start. And then, what is it going to be like down the stretch, as you try to push for not just a playoff spot, but potentially home field? And can you imagine, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but, can you imagine a second-round playoff game in Cleveland? I mean, I can't imagine what kind of atmosphere, football-wise, is in this town right now with the draft. A home playoff game in Cleveland is kind of insane to think about the potential of.
Great stuff, Jake. Awesome, buddy. Great talking to you. It's going to be a fun off season. Going to be even a more remarkable training camp when we get there. Always appreciate your expertise, my friend.
Let's go.
All right, guys. Good to talk to you all. Take care.
All right, that's our good buddy Jake Trotter, ESPN NFL Nation Browns reporter, joining us there on the hotline. We'll take a look around the AFC North, and remember, gearing towards about a half hour from now, where our coach, Kevin Stefanski, will join us here on the program. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop and friends at Weather Seal Home Services. If you need a roof replacement, would you like to replace your roof for the last time? Questions that are probably yeses for a lot of you. That's the benefit of choosing a metal roof from Weather Seal. Metal roof technology, materials, styles, and colors have improved significantly. They are beautiful, nearly indestructible, and affordable. Plus, with a new metal roof, Weather Seal includes a 6-inch gutter upgrade and up to 7 years, zero-interest financing as well. Call my guys, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. Big picture before we get in the AFC North. What jumps out at you this weekend in terms of the league? And then we'll kind of go around the AFC North teams. There were a couple of things that did for me. The Aaron Rodgers thing not going anywhere. And if you read Peter King this morning, he thought it was more likely that Rodgers would not play versus play. There's been talk that he's basically said, if the GM's still there, I'm not playing there.
Yeah.
And yet, to Florio's point, he hasn't come out and said it. Like he said it. I thought Florio made a great point. He goes, look, he said, I want the Jeopardy job full time. Why hasn't he done the same with the Packers? Why hasn't he made the same public statements with them? Maybe it's respect to the organization, respect for the fans, who knows? But that did kind of hover around the weekend, was the Rodgers thing. And we haven't had something like this in a while.
No, blew everything up and was
about still under contract.
The big story on Thursday. And, A.J. Hawk, who was just with him, says he thinks there's a 0% chance that he retires. But he is demanding changes in Green Bay if he is to come back to Green Bay. It has gotten so personal with him and Gutekunst that it's he goes or I go, which is just a stunning thing. I guess I was reading something. It goes back to Jake Kummerow.
Has been there for a long time too.
I know it goes back to a cutting of Jake Kummerow. 20-some years. There's who knows. Clearly, it all is not well there. And I thought that it was so interesting that he wouldn't speak with Tirico, but what he told Tirico was that he was sad that this rift became public. He wouldn't speak on camera, but that's kind of what he shared with him. It only became public because he
told Mike it's
okay
or if you went with this.
Forced the Niners to, correct.
Yeah, there's no way that he would tell this to Tirico and say, hey, this is off the record, and then Tirico would say it unless he told Tirico you can say it.
Right. Also true.
So
it's a fascinating one. I mean,
so their organization has always been, their management drafts players, coaches coach players, players play. Like, that's the way they do it. They've never had, players don't have insight. Like, everyone kind of has their pecking order, and you stay in your lane. And they haven't adjusted for today's athlete, is the way that kind of it seems. Like, they haven't acquiesced to Rodgers or asked his opinion on things, and it bugs him, frankly.
And it's also not an organization, due to the way that it is structured, that has an ownership group where he could go to the owners and lay it out, which happens in other organizations. And then the owner sometimes steps in and says, I'm the owner. I would rather have Aaron Rodgers happy. You've been a great employee, nothing personal. He doesn't want you here, and he's the franchise. I'm the owner. You're out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, because it does kind of protect that front office, that they have more power than a lot of front offices because they don't answer to an individual ownership. They don't. They kind of are that role. They are the entire executive branch, as it were.
Yeah.
So fascinating where that turns out. Another thing that I thought was really fascinating was, so the Houston Texans had like 5 picks, but they used a second rounder on this quarterback out of Stanford.
Their first pick. That was the first pick they had.
And you say to yourself, that was their very first pick. For a team that needs all that they need to take their first pick being a quarterback, tells me that Deshaun Watson is not going to play another down for the Houston Texans regardless.
Did you hear what Jeremiah said on the broadcast? I know you're not hard of hearing, but I don't know if you came across it.
I did not.
Jeremiah
No, I did not catch
referred to him as everybody knows in the league that he has played his last down as a Texan, and he is a former Texans quarterback. That's what he said. In the middle of the draft broadcast, Daniel Jeremiah said that.
So that is something then that as a league, now he's got the off-field stuff, which is significant, but that is another player who, as a league, is going to be floating out there at some point.
He certainly hopes he will be able to be floating out there at some point, yes.
Yeah. I mean, one way or another, I mean, these are civil. There are no charges at this point.
Correct.
It's all civil.
Absolutely correct.
You know, so it's not like he's not facing jail time at this point.
No.
There are no, he hasn't broken a law. According to law, hasn't gone out and charged him with anything. It's a civil lawsuit. So now the NFL could suspend him, but despite that, that's another quarterback who could be out there.
Yep.
Another one who could be out there potentially, although I don't know where the spot would be Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
Now, all intents are that 49ers are going to play him this year, but at some point you're going to play Trey Lance.
Can you believe that we actually were, for a while, dealing with all of this? If you wanted Mac Jones, you stay at 12.
Jones?
They could have stayed at 12 and gotten him. No
right.
problem.
Now, so Peter King does a pretty good job of laying out how that happened, and that some of it was true.
They did like him, of
Kyle
course.
was in love with Mac Jones at 12. Loved him at 12. And they would send him tape, and he would go, let's get this guy at 12, we're good. And then they got more into it. And so that was that is really where you're at but I thought that was so that's another one that's got to get sorted out a little bit in terms of what that quarterback situation is going forward. And initially, and that's the reason that Schefter said what he said, because who's known the Shanahans longer than Schefter? So when he says they're taking Mac Jones, because he believed that they are based on what he's been told by them.
I didn't believe for 1 second. John Greco, who played for Kyle Shanahan, didn't believe for 1 second. Joe Thomas didn't believe it for 1 second. And it turned out not to be. You didn't believe it. We didn't buy it not 1 second on this program.
No.
And so the question would be, I think now an interesting question is, how much better does Trey Lance have to be than Mac Jones to make the move justifiable? If you would have truly been very happy with him at 12, knowing you could have stayed there and had all the other picks that came with it.
2 1s.
How good does Trey Lance have to be? Pretty good.
Pretty damn good.
Pretty good.
Yeah. It's a big bet on Kyle, who clearly doesn't lack confidence, but it's a big bet on him. And they've missed on some. He's missed on some. So it's a big one for him, to make sure that he can get it.
It's a big one. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it certainly is. As we go around what the rest of the AFC North did, I think that the one thing that I think is, for me, is pretty clear coming out of this is that it's us and the Ravens separated in the AFC North. And I have tremendous respect for Pittsburgh, and I think that Najee Harris will be very good there.
Yeah.
I do. I think he'll be very good there. I think he could be 1,500 total yards, 12 touchdowns. I think he could have a monster year there. But I also think that they have a lot of holes, and he's going to have to overcome a lot for them to have success. And I think they're kind of in an in-between stage. Baltimore is the team that you look at and you say, okay, and you heard their comments over the weekend from management that their priority is getting an extension done with Lamar Jackson. I think the Lamar Jackson extension is a really interesting conversation this summer. I think that's a tough spot.
It is. It is. And I think, that's their priority. But if I were them, I would want to watch how this year unfolds. You say you got him Hollywood Brown, you got him Bateman, you've got Andrews. Can you throw the ball well enough for us to win and to go all the way? Because if you can't, they have to make a decision on him. It is a quarterback whose main skill, and of course he's improved as a thrower of the football, but you watch it, he is not an upper half of the league thrower of the football. And as a runner, as a quarterback, that is a declining asset. Every year you're in the league, that is going to be somewhat on a decline. And it comes with injury risk, et cetera. So if he can't be the one that you count on to when you're behind to throw it, and I'll tell you, I'm thrilled they drafted Rashad Bateman with their current setup, because I would rather have Lamar Jackson throwing the football than he and J.K. Dobbins running it.
Yeah,
and I'd certainly
rather
love
it for Bateman.
I'd certainly
love it for that. Yeah, I would. I do too.
I'd certainly rather having him throwing the ball on the boundary than down the middle to Mark Andrews. So of course it makes you have to pay attention to these guys, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. But that pick felt a lot like I talk about some of the other picks, which would be when they pick Najee Harris, who I think is going to put up, to your point, excellent numbers there. But at the same time,
you'll like him in fantasy.
You'll love him in fantasy. But at the same time, I also think that that's not a great line, and I'm less afraid, honestly, of that team running the football than I am of, that team throwing the football.
Yeah, they've got a lot of weapons. Pat Freiermuth, who they picked up out of Penn State's a really nice player. They still have big questions on their offensive line, though, and that was something that they didn't address to the way that you thought they were going to do it. They didn't. So they still have some problems there. I really like what Cincinnati did in the North. You have to hope that Burrow can come back and be healthy from their perspective, but I like the idea of getting Jamar Chase where they got him. I think he's a big-time player on the outside. I think that's nightmarish when you think about Boyd and him and Higgins and Joe Mixon and Burrow. As accurate as Burrow is, as much of a gamer as Burrow is, that is a nightmare scenario to deal with. They will be judged, though, on Jackson Carman, who's their second-round pick, the tackle out of Clemson. He is going to transition to guard. He's an Ohioan. He was a five-star kid. He went to Clemson over Ohio State, went to Clemson. He's going to have to be able to play and make an impact right away because they passed on some players. Tommy Eichenberg out of Notre Dame was available there. I want to say there was Landon Dickerson out of Alabama was available at the top of that round, and they passed on those guys and traded back and they moved back and got Carman instead of just staying where they were and drafting who they are. So that their draft will really be predicated to me on that Jackson Carman pick because they passed on the ability to draft some of those guys to move back and for him to fall in
an extra
lap.
fourth-round pick. And by the way, Agent to the Stars represents Jackson Carman, so congratulations to that duo on that selection there. I like Joseph Osai, though, the edge. I think he's
Texas.
They're trying to get a Carl Lawson replacement, a little bit smaller but explosive around the edge, and I thought that was a good pick. And they really addressed the line kind of in the middle. Cameron Sample, who has big size, 6'3", 280, and then Tyler Shelvin, the monster, 350 in the middle of their defensive line out of LSU to kind of replace, maybe what they lost in Billings all those years ago. I love that they drafted a kicker in the 5th round. How about that? You got to like that from the Bengals.
Pretty wild.
That is wild. I don't fault them for Chase. I think that the people who are making it out like this is just so, cut and dry, how could they do that, et cetera, et cetera. That's not how I certainly viewed that. At the same time,
what do you mean? There are people who think they should have taken Sewell?
100% who think it's outrageous.
Like
overwhelmingly.
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree with that. If you think if Chase is special, and I tend to think that he is. Look, we had the best left tackle in the last 30 years in the NFL. We had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. I mean, it's all pros everywhere.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean wins unless you have quarterbacks and people who can make plays.
Yep.
There's not for as great as we were and as great as the Hoff is, and he is a first ballot Hoff, when you're a defensive coordinator, you're not game planning for the Hoff.
Correct.
You're saying, hey, defensive end, if you get by him twice, it's a win.
Here's what
you're game planning for Jamar Chase. You're saying, how do we take him away? That's what you're doing. And they have addressed tackle. They have.
Right. And they brought
They took Jonah Williams in the first round 2 years ago, is back and healthy, and didn't they just take Riley Reif too?
They picked him up, and they got Jackson Carman. Yeah. So
address it.
Listen, I go back to 2018, second half of the season here with the Cleveland Browns. Our quarterback was the least hit, least sacked quarterback in the NFL. And our starting tackles were Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard.
Yep.
When the offense is clicking and you're getting the ball out and you've got playmakers and you've got a good scheme, you can overcome that. Now, if you want to be a team like us that's predicated on, this zone scheme, and I think it's important, and we did it in a very judicious manner to beef up this line with some homegrown guys. Dorse made a great trade. You got to give him credit, bringing Wyatt Teller in. You look back at that. That happened, I think, the last preseason game 2 years ago.
Sure.
And all of a sudden that looks like a home run steal that you got there as Teller fits this offense. But, Joe says when you have a guy like Bill Callahan, you're always going to have solid offensive line play, even if you don't have marquee talent. But where the guys separate themselves are the skill positions. That's it. They're more dangerous to me now with the notion that they're going to run Chase, Higgins, Boyd out there with Joe Mixon, who they want to play all 3 downs and be a stud this year with Joe Burrow than they would have been with Higgins, Boyd, and, maybe they put a Diami Brown or a Dwayne Eskridge somewhere in the second round, one of those guys. But that guy is – Jamar Chase is legit.
He is as legit as it goes. He would have been. He was the number one receiver in this draft. He would have been the number one receiver in last year's draft. He is elite traits. That's what he is. Don't miss the Browns Draft Review Show presented by Discount Drug Mart tonight at 7, University Hospital's Cleveland Browns Radio Network. Andrew Barry will join the guys, Jim Donovan as well. They will recap the 2021 NFL Draft. Your head coach, Kevin Stefanski, will join us next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you're injured at work, call the Workers' Compensation Lawyers at 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. With that, we head out on the hotline for a little chat with our head coach, Kevin Stefanski, joining us here on Cleveland Browns Daily. Coach, so good to hear from you again, my friend. I wanted to ask you, I saw some of this stuff with you and Andrew and Paul over the weekend, and if I didn't know better, I'd think you guys knew each other for a decade. Like, it's amazing the chemistry that you guys have and the similar thought you have on building a football team. Do you ever, it feels like kismet almost. What does it feel like to you to be a part of it, and the fact that this all came together with guys who previously had very little, if any, knowledge of one another?
Yeah, Beau, I would tell you, I hope it feels that way for our whole building. You know, it was really cool to have all of our scouts back in the building, have our coaches here. As you guys know, saw you the other night for the first time in many months. So I just think everybody being under the same roof, back to working with each other, bumping into each other in the hallway. All of that, I think, is a big deal when you're talking about working together as an organization. And we want to be collaborative. That's what we set out to be. And it's so much easier to do when you're in person. With Andrew and Paul, I mean, we're very much aligned. I know that's the famous buzzword, but that's the truth. We share that how this to go.
Coach, I know that internally you guys were very happy with this draft. Externally, rave reviews, A's thrown around. But I want to know what your dad thought of the draft.
You know, my dad, being a personnel man in the NBA, he has a lot of free advice.
Yeah.
And he's never afraid to share that free advice with me or with Andrew or anybody. So he got to be around Andrew and Paul for a little bit this weekend, and he was happy to share his thoughts. So he thinks he's dangerous because he'll listen to the radio or watch a little bit of the TV, and then he thinks he knows what he's talking about.
That's amazing. Is he doing any scouting, Coach? Is he independently doing a little scouting on the side?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's working with the Pistons. Obviously, that's his day
job.
But I think he's moonlighting as a Brown scout.
It's awesome.
I love it. It was a treat to get to meet him, Coach. As you mentioned, people getting to be around, and I'm sure he was thrilled with the way everything worked out. Now, I wanted to ask you because, Beau and I, we want to be more coachable. We've huddled up. We've taken your note. We're open to it. And so the first thing that we've collectively decided we want to learn, because we said we don't have the skill set, is the poise and the restraint to know that you guys wanted Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but to not move up into the 30s, to not move up into the 40s. When people said, maybe we don't like what you're offering here, sticking to it and then still getting him at 52. What was that? Just take us through that, hour or two once Friday night kicked off, knowing you wanted to make a move, but having the poise to just let it come to you and ultimately still getting what you want at the price you wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, that's Andrew and his crew. And I think, again, going back to that collaborative spirit, I mean, I get to sit on this Zoom call and watch those guys operate. We're 10 picks out, we're 5 picks out, and just the dialogue that's going on. And that was a unique situation. We didn't expect him to be where he was, and Andrew found a trade partner, and the price was right to go up and get a player that we felt was a fit for us. So I just think you have to be ready in those moments to really go where the board is taking you. And it's a lot. It also relies, or it's very similar to when you're calling a game on offense or defense, and calling the game that's called for. So I don't think any of us thought that situation was coming up. That never came up in any of the mock drafts that we did as an organization. But when it became time, I think everybody got all the information out that was necessary, and then we're able to execute that trade.
Coach, obviously we have the priority this offseason very, very obviously was on defense, running everybody back on offense. This draft, first 2 picks, you get 2 guys who, boy, from our vantage point, you would have loved to have either one at 26. You get both of them, one at 26, one at 52. But you got some new toys on offense as well in Anthony Schwartz and Demetric Felton, who, Schwartz is probably the fastest player in this entire draft. And Felton's kind of a guy who can do a little bit of everything and give you a lot of different options there. We used the word versatility when we saw you last week in person. And then James Hudson, who I know for a fact Luke Fickell, the coach at Cincinnati, just loved what that guy was capable of. And if you look for proof, go look at the Georgia game where they were able to move it, and then he gets the targeting, and then that stopped a little bit. If you could, just comment a little bit on what you like with those three guys and what they can bring to the table.
Yeah, Anthony Schwartz was a guy that we really liked a lot about him. I mean, I know when you talk about him, the first thing you mention is the world-class speed, and that's absolutely legit. But the more you dig into him, he's a really, really smart young man. Very impressed in our interview. He's a guy that can line up everywhere, understands football. He's a young player. I don't think he's 21 yet. So I think he's a player that will continue to develop. He was a good player for Auburn. I think he's a guy that, if he puts the work in, can continue to get better. Hudson was a guy that we targeted. Really excited to get him up here. Has some traits that match what we do schematically. And I think Coach Callahan and Coach Peters really do a nice job of developing young players. And we felt like giving them a guy that they can, go to work with and spend some time on that grass and in the meeting rooms and really develop a young player. He's newer to the position, having played defense. And then Felton out of UCLA just was a guy that really – he does a lot of things well, and you got to see him at the Senior Bowl lining up at wide receiver, obviously playing in the Chip Kelly offense as a running back, handing it to him, throwing it to him. So some versatility there. He's also a returner. So we'll see. And really, with all these guys, we like what we saw on tape, which is the reason we took them. And then once we get them, under our roof and we can work with them, then we see what their role becomes. But it's certainly something that will be earned.
It's going to have to be, and we were talking earlier, training camp is going to be must-see because getting on the field is going to be hard. Making this roster is going to be hard. A lot of competition. Coach, I want to drill in on Anthony Schwartz for a little bit. I know that there have been reports he's been working out with Jarvis down in Florida. Is that something, do you guys talk to Jarvis in this process and say, hey, what have you seen with him? Is that one of the things that happens?
Honestly, I didn't know that. That's news to me. So okay. I have not, but I can – now I'll follow up with them.
Well, that is good. And then second, what does that kind of speed bring to this style of Cleveland Browns offense that I know is an amalgamation of a lot of things you do and Coach Callahan and Chad O'Shea and AVP and Stump, everybody on the staff. But what does that speed open up for you or unlock, whether it be jets or the deep overs or the big verts that just create space? What is it that it unlocks for you as an offensive designer and play caller that maybe you didn't have last year?
Well, I would tell you, Nathan, it remains to be seen. Certainly, Anthony's skill set, we were excited about. It's the reason we went up and got him in the third round. But speed in general, I think every position you list, your speed's going to be one or two in terms of what you're looking for. At the wide receiver position, we talked about it the other night. Speed's important because corners now know you have speed. When the corner knows you have speed, he's going to play off and maybe play a little bit safer. So I think Anthony has a skill set that can definitely be developed and see where it takes him. I'm just not ready yet to say it's going to do this for our offense or do that because he's a young player, and I don't want to say that his addition is going to necessarily unlock anything.
Yeah, that's the thing that Nathan and I were talking about, and Nathan been here longer than I have, but even I've been here long enough where we could kind of say, all right, when it comes to the 53, all right, here we go, these guys in, let's move it along, and then let's see what else happens. But when we start talking about just the sheer numbers of talented players that Andrew Berry and yourself and Paul that you guys have put in here, and I know it's AB and his staff that are out there scouring and talk about free agency now, 2 drafts. I mean, Nathan did this exercise off the top of the show where we basically started an entire nickel of new guys that were added to this Joe Woods defense, which is a remarkable thing. And they're not just guys, like big ones. I mean, they're big-time players. How will you go about melding this all together? Has that already started for you?
Yeah, definitely. We knew going into this player acquisition cycle, we had a lot of guys coming off of that were expiring contracts on the defensive side. So it was no secret that we were going to have to add some guys, and we did it via free agency, obviously adding some more guys via the draft. But Joe and the staff, and we've talked a lot about, playing guys in their roles was a big deal. And I think even last year, I think if you look at our linebacker core last year, I thought the coaches did a really nice job of playing guys in their roles. And And that's what we have to continue to do. So as we get these guys, as we get to know them, then it's our job to find out the right role for them. And it really does remain to be seen. We love the versatility of some of the guys we added. We know that there's no shortage of things you can do. We could spend a lot of time on the whiteboard drawing up things, but it's going to be a matter of what our guys can handle and what we think fits us best. And those are the type of things that happen as you get out on the grass, as you get through training camp, through the preseason, and hone in on what your guys do well.
Coach, what is when you get these guys, what's the first thing that you want to impress upon them now that they are Cleveland Browns? And if you say it's smart, tough, and accountable, message received by Jeremiah Wusu-Koramox. In our interview with him, the first thing he said is the 3 pillars, man, smart, tough, and accountable. Is like a Hulk Hogan promo. I loved it. But what's the first thing you want them to take away now that they're Cleveland Browns?
It's time to work. We picked them. We're excited to have them. And now they have to go earn a role. And there's really no secret way of doing that other than working. So I think that we have the right guys. I think Andrew and his staff identified the right guys that we're excited to work with. And it's our job as coaches to develop these young guys. But they certainly heard from me, and they're going to hear from their coaches, and we'll get them for a rookie mini camp coming up in a couple weekends. But the bottom line is they have a lot of work to do. And we as coaches are excited to get to work with them and help them along in their maturation.
Post-draft, have any of the veterans on this team or the guys that you would consider the core kind of reached out post-draft, post-off-season, I would say, just to express how excited they are to get this team back together, get to work, and get rolling on this season?
Yeah, my dialogue with the guys has been great, and I think they're excited to work. We've had some really good Zoom meetings. Just wrapped up one earlier today. The guys are attentive. I think we're full speed ahead on some of our installs offensively and defensively. So we're covering a lot of ground with the veterans. And then, like I mentioned, we'll get those rookies at the rookie minicamp, and then they'll become part of the meetings after that. So we're on schedule, if you will, on our process. So right now it's the virtual program, and we're covering a lot of ground, and I think the guys are doing a nice job with it. It's something that I think our guys understand, that you can learn a lot, you can take away a lot of things from these Zoom meetings as we continue to try to grow as an offense and a defense.
Coach, I know you were grinding through this process, but I'm wondering if you were able to at least for moments here or there pay attention to what was going on in this city down on that lakefront, because it was pretty magical. And I think it started with seeing Jarvis up there with Joe and Bernie, and the fans interrupting the commissioner with chants of Bernie, which was just awesome to see. And then it ends with a literal double rainbow over the event by the time it's all said and done. And I think our city really shined, and you've been in the city for a little over a year now, and I'm wondering if your impressions of the way that this all was put on and the way that it was handled.
Oh, I thought it was outstanding, and kudos to everybody. The amount of planning that went into it. I visited the set down there Friday, I think it was, Friday afternoon. Got to walk around, brought my family down there to see it. It was incredible. They put on a great show. I thought the city looked great. So happy that our fans were able to be a part of it. So it was, as we all are going through this and coming out of this, and hopefully everyone's getting vaccinated out there, I should mention that. But to see everybody out there, it just reminds me, or makes me think that, God, it's going to be fun to see a full stadium. And that's where, again, I hope people continue to make safe choices. But this is the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel for me, is a full stadium at First Energy Stadium. So that's what I'm excited about. Also, pretty cool to see Miles there. I don't think he's missed many days in the gym. He's looking pretty good.
He looked like one of the pump you up guys. I mean, that suit was fraying at the seams. I can't believe it stayed together. It was insane.
Yeah, it was a good sight to see, and I know Miles. He works his butt off, so it looks like he's in regular season mode.
Coach, before we go, I want to leave you with this, because this was, first of all, you talk about the stadium. That is music to my ears. But we had a great moment in the midst of this draft that our own Jason Gibbs had mocked James Hudson to the Browns. He loved his footwork, his movement skills.
Loved him.
And then it came to fruition in one of the greatest moments in CBD history, to be perfectly honest with you, Coach. So I just wanted to let you know, in addition to be a big-time producer, maybe future scout for Gibby.
Great job, Gibby. I didn't know that. That's outstanding. Yeah. Hey, the more you can do,
That's right.
Produce CBD, write up some offensive linemen. Hey, we love versatile players. We like versatile staff.
Yes. No hierarchy of thought here, Gibby. Good ideas are good ideas, brother.
That's right, man. Coach, thank you so much for your time, man. We appreciate you. Awesome weekend. Great to be a Cleveland Brown.
All right, gentlemen. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
All right. That is your head coach, Kevin Stefanski. The next level is coming up
What
next.
a
We're
moment.
back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 8:50 ESPN Cleveland.